Hi, it's Tenma here, and I'm here to start off my new video series. It is recapping and discussing the current generation of Kamen Rider Sentai and Power Rangers. And currently right now it is Kamen Rider Gaim, Ressha Sentai ToQger, and Power Rangers Super Megaforce. Now, real quick, I'm going to be behind on the Japanese stuff because I follow Subtitles. Specifically, I follow TV-Nihon Subtitles, and that tends to be about a week behind. So, sorry I'm going to be a week behind on the footage of that, and that's simply because I can't follow the raw. I don't know that much Japanese, so sorry. And as for me following TV-Nihon, and you're going to notice that I'm going to be using the footage from that. It's what I use. Please don't start a subtitle war. I really don't care which one way or another. It's just who I upload my episodes from. Now with that, let's get started with Kamen Rider Gaim. Sorry, I don't have a bowler hat yet. Now, this episode, it's a toss-up of whether or not I like it or not, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that this episode really kind of is not as action-packed and not as just pushing the story forward as a lot of previous episodes have been.
The story is simple. Team Gaim is trying to restore the good name of the Beat Riders. Kota uses his powers cleaning up the city, while Mai and the others organize a dance-off. It doesn't go off well on both ends. People still think their riders are not to be trusted, and nobody wants to do a dance without Team Baron. Meanwhile, Orin finds out about the dance and wants to crush the riders. That's pretty much his subplot. Kaido has his own plot, which is leaving Baron. This begins to unfold when confronted with the dance proposition. Kaido goes, fuck it, dancing was only to display power, but later, when Orin is succeeding at spreading hate towards Beat Riders, Pico starts crying.
Kaido, like the cold bastard he is, announces that he is leaving the team and hands over leadership to Zack. Not only does he hand over leadership to Zack, but he also hands it over his driver as well. Now, back with Team Gaim, they once again try to get all the teams together for the big dance event. But because of Orin, everyone is a little apprehensive because, again, everyone thinks that the teams are just a bunch of street punks that are awful for humanity. And when all seems lost, all of a sudden Zack comes in and says Team Baron will be sharing a stage with you guys and will be joining in. But he also drops the news that Kaito has left.
Kota goes after Kaido, and Kaido announces plans. He's going after Yggdrasil. Kota tries to get Kaido to change his mind about all this, but Kaido keeps insisting that he works better alone.
After some science, the big dance never begins, but it looks like only Team Baron and Team Gaim have shown up for it. Not only that, their audience is very small, and this disappoints the team at first. And to rub insult to injury, Orin shows up, claps, and basically gives a whole speech that you need to stop this immature shit right now.
DJ Sagra is broadcasting and is trying to reach out to the other Beat Riders. Takatora is less than thrilled about this, wondering why Sagra is even broadcasting because...
Didn't we fire this guy, 4 episodes ago?
Mai pulls everyone together with the Gaim spirit of, who cares? It's just one person. Let's dance, damn it! Show everyone what we're made of.
So everyone bands behind Kota, and they basically say, we're gonna dance. Orin doesn't take this lightly and sends Imes to go attack them. And now we have the big fight. What we are looking for in almost every single one of these shows. Fight scenes.
We also get a new writer, Zack, as Kamen Rider Knuckle. His power is punching the shit out of things. Anyway, we must dance on! And the other Beat Rider team show up. Throughout the fight, the dance is sabotaged by Junoichi, but Michi finds a way to keep it going. And that is, through snapping your fingers, apparently. Also, when all seems lost, Kaido suddenly shows up. Everything seems pretty victorious, Kaido even giving Zack parting words, grow stronger. However, Kota is ambushed by a new rider.
Like I said, this episode has its action, but it's mostly through a lot of the character-driven stuff, which is Kaido leaving Baron, Team Gaim trying to pick itself up and everything. But overall, this feels sort of lackluster compared to everything else that's been going on right now. You know, we've had all these things dumped on us, and this just seems like a breather. And I think I appreciate it for what it is, which is a breather episode. This is time for us to sit, take in all that has happened the past 3 or 4 episodes, and just breathe. And it looks like we needed this looking at some of the stuff that is happening in episode 19. Overall, I would say give this episode a watch. Again, it introduces Zack and gets a little bit more into his character, and it introduces him as a new writer, as Kamen Rider Knuckle. That's it for Gaim this week. Stay tuned as we hop aboard the Imagination Train for Choo-Choo ToQger! This episode was fun. It's not my favorite start to a Sentai, but it did pretty well with the setup, and it was a pretty fun thing to watch. It was very entertaining. Now, our setup is pretty simple. There is the world of imagination, and of course the world of Earth. And the Shadow Line is threatening to destroy the land of imagination and Earth. And it's up to our heroes of our Rainbow Line to stop it!
いや、みたいじゃなくてそうだから。
そういうの男らしくないよ。やめなさいって言ってるのに。くない。私は強い。私は強い。私は強い。スーパーガー
Are really crazy heroes.
The episode starts with children playing the land of imagination. However, monster kidnaps them and puts them on a train. We are then introduced to Wright, who is asleep and bites the monster. I'm pretty sure the other heroes are a little bit better than he. However, the odd way of fighting for our current heroes seems to be doing the trick. And that's when Wright decides to join in and gets his ass kicked. We didn't cut to Wright as a kid climbing a tree and falling from it. But hey, it was a dream, and they're back on the train. The exposition train. We meet the conductor and his right-hand man, Ticket-kun.
One of the first things that is explained is the flashback. It is how they met. And Wright realizes this when he calls Tokachi by his name. When Wright knows that none of them have given their name so far. And it jogs his memory to when they all first met. It was under a tree, and it was basically one big, fort. And Wright said that it goes into space. And I believe it was when Kari went, no, it really doesn't. And then Tokachi actually goes, well, where in space does it go? And Wright shuts him up and goes, it is space because I have decided that it is space. That is essentially what he has said. And, this of course jogs the memory, and everyone gets a happy reunion. But they kind of go, well, how were we chosen to begin with? We just kind of all woke up on the trains and were asked to become ToQger. This really isn't answered, and we are thrown into the setup of the
Their goal is to wrap the world in darkness and be fashionable steampunk monsters. We are introduced to Madame Noir, her daughter Miss Greta, Baron Nero, and General Schwartz. Their names all have to do with the word black, of course, as they're fighting the Rainbow Line. It seems they're trying to prepare for the Emperor of Darkness.
We're back on the Rainbow Line again, and they are once again asked why they were chosen for this. And the answer is rather simple.
Imagination!
Well, it's just in time for the Shadow Train to show up. Wright just jumps right into the situation without grabbing his henshin device. They actually do a good fourth wall joke for it.
The conductor goes a little bit more to why they were chosen. It is because they have the power of light, to defeat the darkness and the shadow line. It is because they have the ability to dream. It is because they have the power to do the impossible. Simply put, they have the power of
imagination.
To exit the point, they go back to right saying,
宇宙だ
With that, Wright throws the monster out of the train, and everyone helps the kids disembark safely, and we get the fight.
Oh man, the Hitchin. Just watch.
いたします。白線の内側に下がってお待ちください。危ない。下がって下がって。特急戦士。特急1号、特急1号、特急2号、特急2号、特急3号、特急3号、特急4号、特急4号、特急5号、特急5号。勝利のイマジネーション。特急じゃ。
Now the fighting begins, and we actually see something fairly interesting.
Now, Sentai typically does the naming of the troops through color. For instance, Time Pink or Hurricane Red. But ToQger, it's differently. They're all by number. Tokyu Ichigo, and so on down the line. So it means that their designation is not color, but by number, which leads to the next bit in the fight.
Which means they can transfer power to one another. Wright decides to just try this out without even thinking, and then everyone just goes in a free-for-all, and everyone just becomes confused of who's who. It also makes the conductor angry, stating they shouldn't switch without permission next time. He's also shown to be able to transfer everyone's colors. Then they defeat...
Okay, so you know the link-up weapon thing. So the linked-up weapon is called Rainbow Rush, and it fires whatever your imagination wants it to fire. And this is what Wright decided was appropriate for this.
よし、あいつは子供いじめたからな。これでいく。
列車が発車いたします。
粉生地蔵レインボーラッシュ。
やっぱり意味がわからん。
だよね
Oh my god, this show's insane.
Anyway, of course the monster grows bigger. It's Sentai, we need giant robots. So they form ToQger and have some insane fun with defeating the monster of the week. Also, I am so happy to see miniatures again. After the celebration, they are given some rather interesting news. The reason why they were chosen is because they're as good as dead. Oh boy.
Like I said, this isn't one of my favorite first starts for a Sentai, but it's really fun to watch. It does its setup, and while the characters aren't fully realized yet, you can see a lot about them through the actions they take throughout this episode. This looks to be a comedy series. There's definitely a lot of humor in it. There's fourth wall breaks, there's, puns, there's all sorts of things going on. And of course, this is all led by the imagination. But I can't help but have a sinking pit on my stomach because of the head writer is Kobayashi. Now, for those of you who don't know, Kobayashi is known for doing more serious and more kind of well-rounded works. And so I'm expecting, while there's going to be a lot of fun to be had in this, there is going to be some more bombs being dropped on us as well. Probably not as, probably not as serious as Go Busters, but we will see. Well, that's it for the Imagination Train this week. And now we will depart and go Mega for Super Megaforce. I wasn't a fan of this episode, and I feel like the first episode, maybe liking it, was a fluke. And that's because my bar, as I explained earlier, I have not been a fan of the new current gen of stuff. And the bar of expectation was very low, that to exceed my expectation, you just need to simply be better than what has been. Unfortunately, it feels like with this episode, they're going back to that grind. And I'm like, no, we're starting to pull yourself out of it. And no, don't do this. This episode was pretty much about getting new powers.
Gia, Emma, and Jake help rebuild the city, which I will clap my hands for. Very rarely do we see the damage actually done by these attacks, and it's nice to acknowledge the collateral damage, as well as the rebuilding afterwards. Meanwhile, Noah is looking up all the information Tensu has given him about the new powers, including SPD, which I'll get to in a moment. During all this, Troy, being the golden age hero that he is angsting about because Robo Knight has gone missing. While angsting about, Troy ends up going to an abandoned warehouse and spots a monster and his plot to, I kid you not,
a missile plan to destroy all the major cities of Earth. It's pretty dark considering this season.
While the Rangers fight, there's actually a really neat morphing sequence that shows a defensive maneuver, and we get the Ranger access for this episode. Our PM is accessed, and I'm glad we're doing the transformation and henshin calls again. It was nice hearing getting gear. So, Die Ranger also happened, and this is how they explained it.
You've now unlocked new modes that have never been seen before on this planet.
I agree that this was a pretty lazy hand wave. Now, we know because of In Space, Lost Galaxy, and Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers, and to some extent SPD, that Power Rangers do exist outside Earth. And the morphing grid, it covers the universe. So, it could have been interesting to have the episode focus on who this Ranger team is and why they could tap into it. Then there's the SPD thing. Now, given what we've known from Once a Ranger, one can assume that the morphing grid goes across time. It's a really good fan theory, and it's a pretty solid fan theory. And it explains why SPD can use their powers, even though they have time traveled every now and then. And it also explains why Time Force can do what they do, which is basically, they go back in time and they can still access this. So that doesn't bother me as much. If you can access from all points, and if you can access the morphing grid, it's safe to assume that you can access the Ranger powers from any point in time.
However, what doesn't hold up is SPD should be founded right now, and there should be aliens immigrating to the planet. This is what happens when you set your futuristic setting in the not-too-distant future. It's probably going to be explained away in some other way. Regardless, the day is saved. They unlock the SPD mode of the Megazord simply by using the powers in battle, and then they go fight the Armada. Because that's what you do, your second episode, is just fight everything. There's a nice moment with the characters on the ship riding into the sunset. They go to the mall reopening, and it's a big moment of, yay, we can't lose!
I'm not impressed by this episode. Now, I really like some things that they did with the action and mixing the footage. A lot of that was good, and there were some good character moments, but overall, I feel like that they have backslid on a lot of things.
Very little is, again, explored with these characters, and we're back to the Stepford cardboard cutouts. The only thing that felt real was Noah interacting with Mr. Burley and the bit with Jake's suit. Those had a bit of humor, and honestly, that small interaction really felt like a group of friends. They're making fun of Jake's situation while sympathizing with him. They're worried about Troy, and they're excited over the new Zord information. The moment at the end and Emma and Ernie's interaction were also good things. I really hope we get more moments like these throughout the season.
And then it just feels lazy. Maybe goof spoiled me on how they handled their 35th season, but I can't help but think that if you're on your 20th season, particularly of a show that has been uncanceled like 3 times, you would put out all the stops for this. You would go into the past of some of these things. Acknowledge the Ranger teams, look into their history, have an episode really devoted to it, and, devoted to pushing these characters forward. Instead, you just basically have Noah looks it up and says we have access to everything. Okay, but how does that celebrate Power Rangers? Whereas goof had a lot of cameos in a lot of episodes that, continued their story, really celebrated Super Sentai and all the seasons that came before it. I'm not feeling that with Super Megaforce. What, they have like, they're gonna have like one big team up at the end, and you know, you don't have to have old Rangers come in and mentor people. You could, you know, like I said, dedicate episodes to, you know, finding out about their history, you know, a little bit more into what they are, who they fought, and everything, instead of what we're being given right now. I'm going to see as the series progress, but given some of the lazy writing I have seen from the current gen, I'm not going to hold my breath. And I feel really bad because I want this season to actually be good. You know, Power Rangers has survived through so much, and I'm going to be really sad if the 20th season really fails on its execution. Well, that is all for this week, and I will see you next week for more recaps.